So you want to get out of the big city, maybe even find a small town and buy some real estate. That, my friends, has become the real American dream in 2026. The problem is, there are a lot of towns in this country and finding the right one can be a bit of a task. I've studied over 500 small towns in the US and found 50 solid picks that I would move to. Today we look at the second batch of 10. We're going to see towns up north, out west, and even one southern town that newcomers describe as having the vibe of a warm blanket. If you live in any of these towns, we'd love to hear what you think about them. Let's take a look. Number 10, Monmouth, Illinois. Monmouth is a western Illinois college town of about 9,000 people that apparently love flat land. It is surrounded by farmland and it sits about 20 minutes east of the Mississippi River and the Iowa border. This is the type of place where journalists end up when they're investigating crop circles. Monmouth is actually the birthplace of Wyatt Earp, the legendary lawman of the American West. I saw his gun. It's hanging over a bar in Alaska. Some people say it's not his. The story is that he had it confiscated at the bar and then forgot to get it the next morning before the steamship left. And the bar theory is that he owed a big debt for his bar tab, so he just left the gun. Who knows, but Monmouth is where this man was born. It was first settled around 1824 and officially established in 1831. The founders originally planned to call it Kosciuszko, a name they reportedly pulled out of a hat because apparently that was urban planning in the 1800s. They quickly realized nobody could spell it, pronounce it, or confidently put it on a road sign. A former New Jersey resident suggested Monmouth instead, saving future generations from having to explain to outsiders what the name is. Now, they do have a college. Monmouth College adds events and educational opportunities, while the OSF Holy Family Medical Center provides hospital and rural clinic services inside the community. So it's got a good-sized hospital here. So if you're retired, this is excellent. What else is really cool if you're retired? It's affordable. The typical home value here is about $116,000. And if you're one of these people that likes the median price, well, the median listing price right now is $127,000. Now, I looked at the Zillow, and there was a bunch of older homes between $110,000 and $175,000. And it's not just the housing. The cost of living here is actually 16% below the national average. This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. I mean, it's rural Illinois. Illinois can be expensive when you move to Chicago, but the rest of the state is pretty damn affordable. And that's one of the reasons it works. It's extremely affordable. They've got a local hospital, they've got a college, and their crime rate is below average. 18% below the national average, actually. Now, the downside, a lot of the homes are really old, so that inexpensive house probably comes with a roof, plumbing, and electrical system that was installed during the Hoover administration. Illinois property tax can also make that cheap house a little less cheap. Number 9, Helper, Utah. Yep, they actually named a town Helper. This is a train town. They actually stopped there. I was on an Amtrak and we had to stop for like 30 minutes one time, so I kind of got off and just walked around a little bit. It was pretty cool. Quiet little town. It was like 7 a.m. It was kind of a nice place. But Helper has about 2,100 residents. It's in eastern Utah and Carbon County. The town sits beneath some really colorful cliffs and has spent years restoring its historic Main Street. Artists and preservation groups have moved into buildings once occupied by mining companies, bars, and businesses that served railroad workers. Interesting historic fact, on April 21st, 1897, Butch Cassidy robbed the Pleasant Valley Coal Company in nearby Castle Gate. They stayed in Helper the day before, and it's said Butch Cassidy later came back to Helper for occasional visits. The downtown looks pretty cool. The day I was there, nothing was open yet. A lot of really cool old buildings. Looking in some of the windows, it was very artsy, or as my grandmother would call a place like this, artsy fartsy. Helper's crime rate is 33% below the national average, and their cost of living is only 5% below the national average, which is still good. If you want to buy a house here, the average home value is about $294,000, which isn't bad compared to the statewide average of about $540,000. That makes Helper one of the few remaining Utah towns where a normal house doesn't require 3 incomes and a successful podcast. If you need a hospital, they got one right down the road, about 10 minutes away in Price. And Price is where you're going to go when you need things that this little tiny town doesn't offer, like a Walmart supercenter and a McDonald's. Now, this one is great for retirees in a lot of ways, but like I said about the hospital, they have one in Price. It's called Castleview Hospital, but if you have some kind of specialty care you need, you might be going into Provo for that, about an hour and 15 minutes northwest. Number 8, Baker City, Oregon. Baker City has about 10,000 residents, and it's got one of the best preserved historic downtowns in eastern Oregon. This one is out in the sticks. I mean, the backcountry of Oregon. This is almost Idaho, and it's part of those counties that keep talking about how they're going to join Idaho and leave Oregon. That nonsense. But it is a nice town that's far away from Portland's BS. I'll give them that. They're about as far away as you can get going east. If you did want to head over to Idaho, you got to cross the Snake River, and the closest place to do that is about an hour and 10 minutes away in Weiser. Actually, on the Oregon side, there's a small town called Annex, and then Weiser is across the Snake River in Idaho. As you drive through Annex, you'll notice that this apparently is a place where people like to collect trash. They got a whole bunch of broken down and abandoned mobile homes. Like this gem right here, it actually has a keep out sign in the window. Who's actually going to approach this gem? I think they wasted money on that sign because the pile of abandoned tires in front of the mobile home gets that message across loud and clear. Luckily, Baker City doesn't look anything like Annex. Baker City's a nice place, Annex, not so much. One cool thing about Baker City, you got the Elkhorn Mountains to the west and a Oregon Trail Interpretive Center here. These people lean heavy into that historic angle. Now, if you want to move here, the typical home value is about $269,000. And then, what they got going on in town right now, poking around Zillow, you got homes going from $220,000 to $300,000, along with a surprising number of large historic properties. No matter what you buy, it's going to be a lot cheaper than Portland or Bend or more attractive communities in Western Oregon. The good news for the retirees, they do have a good-sized medical center called St. Alphonsus Medical Center. If you need anything beyond what they've got, you got to go to Nampa, Idaho, or Boise, about 2 hours away. And that's kind of their biggest drawback. Boise, the biggest city around, is 2 hours away. So if the local bar or high school football isn't your thing, that's probably where you're going to want to go for any real entertainment. Now, I get it. Not everyone needs nightlife and entertainment and all that, and you're perfectly fine. Then ignore what I just said. But for all of you that are thinking of moving there and you want to, go golfing all the time, Baker City only has one golf course and not much else. Number 7, Houghton, Michigan. Houghton is a small college town in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. There's only a few towns that are farther north, and this is where you will find Michigan Technological University. And this brings all the things that a good college will, engineering jobs, cultural events, and one of the highest concentrations of people that'll just randomly critique bridges. Yeah, they got a lot of engineers that come out of that school, so of course that's how they are. Engineers are just weird people. Smart, but sometimes a little weird. This is one of the ones, if you have a problem with snow, just scratch this one off your list and move on to the next one. This is one of the snowiest towns in America. Back in the 70s, they had a stretch where they went 100 days of serious snow. Nothing moved in this town unless it was on snowshoes, skis, or a snowmobile. Now, the good thing for retirees that like to fish, there is plenty of fishing here. Just search Portage Canal or Portage Lake in Michigan. There's one in Ohio, so be careful on that one. And there's plenty of fishing videos for this area. But this definitely isn't a place you want to come looking for high-income jobs. Their income per capita here is 36% below the national average, but their unemployment rate is also 31% below the national average, which tells me they got a lot of jobs, just not well-paying jobs. The good news is their cost of living is 5% below the national average, and they got great schools, and health and safety is amazing. This was a big place for copper mines back in the day. That's sort of what built this area. But in 1854, Ernest F. Pleshke, I think that's pronounced right, platted Houghton, and it was incorporated into a village in 1861. In the first days, it was known to only have thieves, crooks, murderers, and Indians living there. But it was responsible for a lot of copper as this country grew. If you want to buy a house there today, the typical home value is about $277,000, which is a little bit more than the county average of $197,000. But if you want to get outside the immediate college area, it's going to be a lot cheaper. Now, for you retirees getting a little bit older, going to need some health care, you've got the UP health system across the bridge in Hancock. Anything beyond what they can do for you, you're going to have to head to Marquette, about 2 hours southeast. All in all, it's not a bad place to live as long as you can get past extreme snow and extreme cold for a good portion of the year. Number 6, Fort Payne, Alabama. Now, I know it's hard for a lot of you to understand that there are nice places in Alabama that aren't Huntsville. But Fort Payne is not too far away from Huntsville. It's in DeKalb County, and it's actually the county seat. They got about 15,000 residents near Lookout Mountain. It's close to DeSoto State Park, Little River Canyon, and some of the best mountain scenery in Alabama. They also got some pretty cool waterfalls in the area. Now, I've seen some strange things in my life when places decide they're the capital of the world. You know, nobody wants to be the murder capital of the world. Nobody wants to be the welfare capital of the United States. You know, there's a lot of things you don't want to be, but then there's some that you want are pretty cool. The rose capital of the United States, the movie capital of the United States. Fort Payne settled on the sock capital of the world. Now, this one's got a little weird history to it. Because of the North American Free Trade Agreement and the Central American Free Trade Agreement, textile imports kind of took a hit in the early 2000s and the late 90s. China started making a lot of socks. Now, this is where it gets weird. A city called Datong in China was really producing a lot of socks, and they decided to name themselves the sock capital of the world. Well, this made the people of Fort Payne furious. Many businesses in Fort Payne accused foreign manufacturers, especially China, of engaging in sock dumping. Yes, they would lower the price of their socks so low, it would put American manufacturers out of business. By 2005, the hosiery mill employment in Fort Payne had declined to around 5,000 people. Now, the town has only 15,000 people, so that's a good chunk of people working in the hosiery business. And it's not like they went from 25,000 people working in the industry to 5,000. It was at 7 at its peak in the early 1900s. But they now are in a bitter struggle against the China sock industry. Now, one of the best things about Alabama is the weather isn't terrible. We're not talking Michigan frozen tundra. We're talking Alabama gets a little cold occasionally, but most of the time it's either pleasant or warm to downright hot and humid. Now, if you want to move here and be part of the sock drama, the typical home value here is only about $210,000. And now, poking around Zillow, it looks like livable homes sit in between $180,000 and $260,000. Obviously, the lower you go on that list, the more work's going to need to be done. All in all, this is not a bad place to live. I kind of like it, especially when you consider it's in Alabama, and there's a lot of really lame places in Alabama. This one's pretty good. Now, if you need a hospital, which we all do eventually, especially if you're in the retirement age, for any specialty stuff, you're going to head up to Chattanooga, which is about an hour away, or Huntsville, which is about an hour and a half away. Maybe a little bit less. Number 5, Beatrice, Nebraska. Yes, I know you're looking at that word right there and you're saying that's Beatrice. Not here, it's Beatrice. If you're looking for it on a map, it's about 42 miles south of Lincoln, Nebraska, and about 100 miles southwest of Omaha. This one is out in the prairie or the farmland, whatever you want to call it. But it is surrounded by farmland and it sits on the Big Blue River. Now, I first heard about Beatrice years ago. I had read something about these 6 people that were convicted of murdering this woman. 5 of the suspects had given confessions, but later they found out that they were threatened with the death penalty if they didn't give confessions, and the police made it sound like this case was a slam dunk. Well, they overturned their convictions because of that. Well, then also around the same time, DNA evidence proved it wasn't them, and it was another prime suspect. So that's kind of a black eye to the town, and that's about the only black eye they got going. This is a great place, and that was back in 1989. Well, actually, the murder was 85, but 89 is when they went to prison. But Beatrice serves as a regional center for the surrounding farming communities. It's, got all the shopping and the healthcare and services most the small towns don't have. So this is like the big place they all go to if they're not going to Lincoln or Omaha. Even though this town is in Nebraska and known for being boring, it's got some pretty cool things here. They've got a golf course, they've got a speedway, they've got a river to do all the fishing you need. They've got a softball complex, And if you really need something to do, you could just head 45 minutes up the road to Lincoln and go to the National Roller Skating Museum. Lincoln is also a good-sized city, so any medical needs you need that Beatrice can't supply, you just head up there. About 45 minutes away, maybe an hour. Now, if you want to buy a home here, the average home value is only $189,000, which is not bad. Poking around on Zillow, you're looking at the typical homes going between $125,000 and $225,000. Obviously, $125,000 will need some work. Number 4, Buckhannon, West Virginia. Home of one of the hardest soldiers I'd ever met in my life. This guy is a great soldier. Wolverton. He just got a little too wild on the weekends, probably kind of stunted his career growth, but great soldier. Buckhannon is a college town of approximately 5,200 residents in central West Virginia. Buckhannon sits a little under an hour south of Morgantown, and it sits on the Buckhannon River. This is also where you'll find West Virginia Wesleyan College. So you go visit and you find out they got a lot of younger people, probably a little bit more than you're expecting. You'll also notice a lot of people wearing orange and black. Those are the team colors. Go Bobcats. Now this is a very interesting story about Buckhannon. There's the band Chicago. In 1970, they came out with an album called Chicago 2. There were 7 songs written on that album, and those 7 songs combined were called A Ballet for a Girl in Buckhannon. The most famous of those songs is Make Me Smile. Well, the trombone player wrote all those songs in an attempt to win back his ex-girlfriend or his ex-fiancée, who at the time was attending West Virginia Wesleyan College in Buckhannon, West Virginia. I always thought that was weird when someone writes a song about a girl and then they never get together or whatever, and then she's just kind of haunted by this famous song about her, like Hey There Delilah. I think they did date for a while, but anyway, you break up, the relationship's over, but there's still this song that you hear on the radio all the time, and it's about you. Songs never get written about guys, though. It's weird. Now, if you want to move into this college town, the typical home value is about $160,000. That's not bad, especially if you get on the outskirts of town, you're going to find larger properties, and a lot of times they're a lot more affordable. If you do that, make sure you verify the internet connection and the septic system and all that good stuff. West Virginia, for all its wonderful things, is a little bit more country than most people are used to. Now, for you retirees that want to go to the hospital every now and then, you're in luck. They got a pretty good sized one called St. Joseph's Hospital, and it's got emergency rooms and all kinds of medical services. If you got anything else you need done, you got to go down to Charleston or Morgantown. The other cool thing, they got a really low crime rate, and if you follow along with West Virginia over the years, they've had a serious opioid problem, and a lot of crime goes with that. Not here. Their crime rate is actually 27% below the national average. And their cost of living is 13% below the national average. It's a great place to live. You're just in West Virginia, and it can be a little rough with the mountains and the snow and the bad weather. If you can live with that, great place to live. Number 3, Maysville, Kentucky. Maysville is an Ohio river town with almost 9,000 residents in northeastern Kentucky. Now, this one's a little bit different because where it really shines is outside of town, not so much downtown. You could buy a nice older home here for under $200,000. The cost of living is 23% below the national average, and their violent crime rate is 19% below the national average. The real negative for Maysville is they don't have a lot of high-paying jobs. And the real reason I put this one on here, it's for retirees on a budget. A lot of the places on these lists, everyone's all, well, those are nice, but I can't afford that. Well, there's a little bit of a trade-off. So if you're on a budget, let's say Social Security is your main source of income, Maysville could be a seriously nice option. Now, if you want to get a nice home around here outside of town, they start off at around $250,000. There's some really nice ones that are in the $400,000s, and that usually comes with a couple acres. Now, they do have a regional medical center here, but if you need any real health care, you're going to be heading up to Cincinnati, probably about an hour and 10 minutes away. And that's a nice little drive up the Ohio River. Yeah, honestly, the Highway 8 there runs right along the river the entire distance to Cincinnati. Now, if you don't want to go to Cincinnati, Lexington's about an hour and a half away, and Louisville's about 2 hours away. Now, Zillow says the average home value here is about $162,000. But if you look at what Zillow's got going on, they have a lot of older historic homes for about $150,000. In town, they can get as low as $100,000. It is a river town, so buying in town, since the town is like right on the river, it might not be the best option because flooding and things like that and your insurance. So if you move in a little bit up the hill, that's where it shines, like I said earlier. And that's the best place to buy a home here. You might actually get some property with some trees between you and your neighbor. It is Kentucky, so you got to watch out for dudes named Jed, who are missing most of their teeth and don't trust the government at all. Sometimes Jed believes they put a chip in his head. That happens a lot in Kentucky, or at least they think it happens a lot in Kentucky. Interesting thing about this town, this is the hometown, and where they were born and raised, of Nick Clooney and Rosemary Clooney. Nick Clooney was a journalist and TV host, and he's the father of George Clooney, the actor. Rosemary Clooney was his aunt. She was a popular singer and actress. Matter of fact, the Russell Theater on 3rd Street in Maysville was where the world premiere of Rosemary Clooney's first film, The Stars Are Singing, in 1953. If you watch this channel long enough, you know I have this thing for old theaters, and the Russell Theater is one of those ones. It's just a really cool atmospheric theater that I was reading an article from a few years ago that they were putting a lot of effort into restoring it. Right now, it's not the type of place you're going to see, first-run movies. It's more movie marathons, classics, documentaries, and, artsy-type movies. Pretty cool, though. Number 2, Red Wing, Minnesota. Red Wing sits beside the Mississippi, surrounded by wooded bluffs and historic neighborhoods. I've been here before. This is another one that the Amtrak stops on. Talked to an Amish man there for a while. It was pretty interesting. This place likes their festivals. They got the Big Turn Music Festival every February. They got the Rolling River Music Festival in July, River City Days the first weekend in August, Hispanic Heritage Festival second week in September, Minnesota Children's Book Festival is in September, and the Fall Festival of the Arts is the second week of October. Minnesota does like their festivals. Greg Norton, the bass player for the band Husker Du, the alternative rock band, he had a restaurant here for a while. I always thought I'd stop by there. It's since closed, but that's kind of a bummer, but I thought that was pretty neat. For you retirees that might need some health care, the Mayo Clinic operates a hospital here. It's got a 24-hour emergency department, and if you need anything else, you got Rochester, about an hour to the south, and if the Mayo Clinic doesn't have what you're looking for, you could always head up to Minneapolis and try your luck there. That's about an hour northwest. And if you want to buy a home there, great. Just be ready for the snow and also be ready to pay about $288,000 for a home. That's the average, so that's not terrible. I'd live in Red Wing. I think it's a pretty cool place. All right, before we get to number 1, let me know, would you move to any of the cities on this list? Do you live in one right now? We'd love to hear your side of the story. Put it down in the comment section below. On to number 1. And number 1, Vermillion, South Dakota. Yes, Vermillion. Sounds like something that comes above trillion. South Dakota is one that's been showing up more and more recently. I think a lot of people are starting to clue into South Dakota and they're moving there. Not just on my channel, but in different articles on websites, I'm starting to see different towns in South Dakota that have become very appealing to people, Vermillion being one of them. This is home to the University of South Dakota, and Vermillion combines a small town living with college sports, performances, and, continued education opportunities for older folks. They got about 12,000 residents. They got a golf course in the Vermillion River just south of town. Because of the college, they got a lot of things you might not expect from a town this big, like they've got a Walmart Supercenter. The Dakota Dome is there. Now, if you're looking for it on a map, Vermillion sits about 45 minutes northwest of Sioux City, Iowa, and it's really close to where the Vermillion River and the Missouri River meet, or the confluence for you vocabulary nerds. Now, like we always talk about the hospitals, they got Sanford Vermillion Medical Center, because if you're 30 watching this, it doesn't make sense why I keep talking about it, but a lot of people are retiring at these places and you need a good hospital, just in case you're wondering. But this hospital is a 25-bed hospital offering medical, surgical, and pediatric care. Anything above that, you got to go to Sioux Falls or Sioux City. If you want to buy a house here, the average home value is $279,000, which is well below the national average and the state average. Great place to live. All right, that's today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. What'd you think? Would you move to any of these towns? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like this one, I know you're gonna love this one up here. It's about hidden small towns that you could almost live on Social Security alone. Everyone have a great day. be nice to each other.